delighted to be having the second show here with Avisheh Mohsenin, my dear, dear, dear friend. Her first show here, I know many of you were here and traveled to be here for that. Thank you for coming back. This looks entirely different. You're going to hear about why. I would like to say that Avisheh has had solo shows across Houston and the state and Columbus. She's been in group shows in Iran, in Italy, in New York, in Seattle, all over the place. And during her last show, she had such a compelling story that they made a documentary about that body of work. And that documentary has actually already been released globally, and it's pretty amazing. There's a link to it in all of our, I think we have 60 videos on YouTube. We encourage you to check them out. We represent Texas-based artists, especially Houston-based artists, and there are so many wonderful ones. So without further ado, there's one more seat. Perfect. Here's Avisheh.
Well, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Megan, for putting an amazing show. And I agree that the opening proved that the pandemic is going downward, hopefully. Thank you for being here, especially my dearest friends and family who have traveled for it, and everybody else, and especially my young art lovers and maybe art collectors. I'm already looking at some items today. I'm going to talk about the series in the exhibition are twofold. So I'm going to start with those collages and then talk about my background, the concept and inspirations, and a little bit about my past work. We're going to go through that rather quickly, and then I'll focus on this wall that is all constructed photography. So this past summer, as you all know, everybody was stuck at home during the lockdown.
We have turn off all the lights.
Oh, that's too bad. I don't know. I'm just making
Maybe
doesn't
one by you.
Do you care?
Perfect.
Yeah. Last summer during the lockdowns, we have a 2 and a 2-year-old at the time. She was less than 2, and I work as an economist. I've always done that. We'll talk about that as well. I would have to tag team time-wise with my husband, who was working as well. Go out on the streets and put her to sleep. Spend times with her. We weren't even seeing grandparents. No help, no nanny. So the limitation of not only COVID pandemic, the uncertainty, but also this lack of time for yourself to think artistically or anything was rather worrisome. But I realized that as we were walking, there were so many things that we could actually play with or do. I mean, you're not even talking to people. We would gather small leaves. These are magnolia petals and all parts of it. She was exploring them, but I also ended up exploring them, taking photographs, making assemblages on the sidewalk. It had some of these work are in the smaller items over there. Some of them are the collages. The effect of it was very ritualistic. You put this very organic, primordial seed-like, food-like, plant-based items together, maybe for display, maybe for sustenance, like we would do ages and ages ago. But then I also, these are some works that are just really randomly placed and assembled together. But I also did these photo collages that I have used as a medium of interest and a medium that I use often. Again, everything, all the source material are photographs. They're sourced from these daily walks or a few times that we went to the family ranch. The way I got into these collage making is that, again, like I said, I studied economics. I grew up in an economist family, had artist exposure, took some drawing classes, but I was destined to be an economist in a way. I moved to the US to go to grad school, and I got my first econ job out of college, and a few days later I'm like, it's not fulfilling, it's not enough, something is missing. I bought a camera and started taking photos of children in black and white. I wanted to do the realistic, very street photography kind of photographs. It wasn't long after, a few of them were a few months, that I realized that's also not very satisfying. It's lacking the element of breaking the rules or a little bit more being more experimental and risk taker. These are all photographs that I have taken and printed, but the color material on them are collages. So the collage making became a go-to medium for me because it allowed me to break the rules, which I couldn't do in my econ job. Everything had to make sense, the data, and the theories and everything. It allowed me to put obstacles in front of my process of whatever, art making, photography, but also having to overcome those obstacles. So then, obviously, that has connotations in life. Nothing is easy or perfect. It also allowed me to really work and think about the concept of what is real, what is not real, what is perception, what is reality. And I don't know why I was so drawn to the concept. I was very inspired by the surrealists, the Dadaists, and all this changing of what's real and things, how they look. And some of that has stayed with me in my work. This is a series of collages that I did on cabinet portraitures. There are late 1800s, early 1900s photographs of people that are, you've probably seen them in flea markets and stuff, on like 5x7, 4x6 cardboardy material. They're called cabinet photos. I would collect them and then apply and appropriate these found images from magazines and such over them. I call them the other and the self because the retelling of their narrative to my narrative was this working, chronologically going back and wondering about these people. Who are they? I could tell from the mark on the back of the cabinet. Oh, this is a Chicago studio. That's a St. Louis studio. Is this couple happy? Are they, what are they doing? And then taking liberty into covering and altering people's families' photos. That was very, it was a little voyeuristic to touch somebody else's history and add something more contemporary or personal into it. The way, I have this other series as well that, again, I'm just showing how photographs has always been a base of my practice. These are also mixed media. There's a base of photograph I took, hand petite family photos cut. There's one, this is just film or slide overlaid on that. And the reason that, like I said, that I would resort to just making all these different things was the satisfaction I would get from making it work and also the storytelling aspect of it. The other thing that I've always have been drawn on is to change something that's just mundane, ugly, at your disposal, ugly especially and common, into something that goes higher than that. That's been important for me, maybe because of growing up in Iran during the war and the revolution and the Islamic Republic and how everything was ugly, and you had to learn a lot of things to make them suitable, especially for children. You're just like visually, there's a lot on nature is not ugly, so that's where you would resort to. And I don't know if you want to let them in. They're more than welcome to it. And the other thing is scarcity of material. It might also go to my economics background. You're always into how to distribute your scarce resources in the most efficient and useful way. So I would take photographs in my collage practice, take photographs of something. This is a pond in a garden, in a Persian garden, and then just use repetition and use them as a form or as a color element. And then just by layering and repetition, create larger forms and meanings. I have talked about, I have this using of ugly, turning of the ugly into the, I don't want to say beautiful because that's subjective, but turning it out of that state of either decay or lack of use or unwantedness into something was the main drive into utilizing all the photographs that I lost in the Hurricane Harvey of 2017. I had just moved from Chicago to Houston, and 6 months later, our house and my studio that was brand new got absolutely flooded with nothing to salvage except for very flooding photographs. Some people have seen the show. There's a catalog from that show. But what happened is that there were a lot of components that experience of loss. First, what is photography? What are these photographs? Some of them I had kept in boxes for over moves and over decades, family slides. I don't even look at them. So are they really objects? Are they my family? Are they my identity, my family identity? Like that they've been in a box, most of them. A lot of them were analog photographs, so I don't have access to recreating them. However, as I was mourning about all these things and questioning and the relationship of photography with history, personal history, and everything that relates to that, I realized that there is beauty in them. And this is a photograph in a Chicago train that looks as if, some of the artists that intentionally manipulate their slides or film are after these effects. The water damage had done that for me. So I welcomed that. I needed a creative process to go through that very biblical experience, and we made a show out of it. So the people here who remember how everybody was very uplifted about this fact that, oh no, you can find the silver lining in something bad. You can lift things up from decay. And visually and artistically, that's something that I go back and forth to retell their story. I mean, their histories were white, but I created a new history on top of them by re-engaging them, reusing them. These are slides that you can absolutely not say what they were before. The slides were, because there's more chemical to it, they were particularly hard to tell what was underneath. But there's this abstraction and color that was interesting. I also made photo collages using that whole repetition and layering concept that I used before. And then we put this show on. So completely redoing this damaged, ugly, smelly, moldy thing. And like I said, questioning a lot on the physicality of photography. Photos were very manual, like those cabinet photos, tin types, you've already seen them, the metal ones. You all have grown up probably like me with photos of dead or alive family on shelves. Just like our albums that we all had. That doesn't exist anymore, as you know. And I have thought about where my interest in photography comes from. I trace it back to my grandmother. And by the way, that's my aunt who's here. And back to the idea of the physicality of photography, I trace it back to her storytelling through her family albums. Again, being in Iran, you had 1 hour of government-sponsored TV, not much entertainment, outdoor sports, of course, family, but not that much access to magic books, a lot of it. But you know what I mean, like visual, imaginative things were pretty scarce at that time because of the way media was. So she was very social in the 50s and had a lot of friends and family. So we would sit there and she would open these albums and go over them over and over, tell stories. So it happens that among her grandchildren, my sister and I are the holders of those family stories. We know more people than any of our cousins do, and I cherish that very much. I've conserved these photos. I've actually made them digitized in order to reproduce them for family members, because they only have one. But then my life looks like that now. I have 44,000 and more, as last time I looked was when I was prepping for this a couple days ago. Photographs on my phone, and one of the things I fret about is what is my daughter going to do? She will never know. She went to hide, in 30 years that she went to hide when she was 4 months old. So I've taken upon myself, which is a very hard task, to make these albums for her on an annual basis, to make this evaporating digital world that you don't even know if it's going to last in some cloud, and is Apple going to be around when she wants to look at it, into physical objects. And again, back to this analog versus digital and what's going to happen to all this digital stuff. Back to this series now, taking photos from everything that I do with my daughter. That's the way my living room and my life and my, the visuals that I'm exposed to has looked like in the last 2.5 years. I was never really into color in a way. I mean, I lived in Chicago. Black is the chic color. It's the same growing up in Iran. That's, you want to go out and be chic, you wear black. And I have talked with friends who have moved from the East Coast here, and they're like, maybe you're interested in color, and what happened here has to do with your moving to the South and to Texas. And I thought about that, and I think I could attribute this interest of these vivacious colors to that event, but also this, and the fact that my life is all about primary colors and balloons and things like that. So, in order to do the series, I had a show coming up, so I needed to do something. I drew on the same two concepts that I told you. What is the stuff that is around me? What is the mundane things that I could turn into something else? And back to the scarce resources and transformation. So I started to take photographs on all the slides, colorful slides that we went to. I realized I didn't have a yellow one, which is what I use in this collage. So I dropped my daughter at school, and I drove 30 miles to get to one. And as I'm driving, I'm like, is it worth it? This is a lot of gas. This is a lot of carbon footprint. But I do like this collage very much. I set up shop in just a corner of a room. I didn't need much. All I needed was these mundane objects. Some of them are at the back. We moved them out of the gallery. We moved them back here after the talk. It really involves this little chair that you see reappearing, a couple colored paper, the balloons that I had to fight my daughter to keep in this room because she would come every night and says, this is mine, take them away, and I didn't want to pop them and really have to rebuild them. So there was that interaction of, again, limitations of, I don't even have a studio that I can work with an ease of mind. But then I try to welcome that and see what I can do with it, as opposed to use it as a challenge that would hinder me from doing the work. Then in this series, which I put them on the screen just because of people on Zoom and IG Live, you can look at just the wall. What I went after, which was less than I had done before, was to use light as an element, use it as a medium. I really followed light and the shadows and also the colors that I was doing. I wanted to explore this small space that now I was in it emotionally because of the pandemic, because of parenthood. You don't have your time, your life is really being driven by another person's life and needs, and also the limitations of just not having other things to like other source material. So I put myself into this zone of, okay, you're gonna go into this miniature land of this imaginary world and create these illusory spaces or structures that denote something else. They don't look constrained or confined or suffocating by no means. There's the elevation on it, there's this transcendence, there's a lot of temporality into the use of the balloon. It was hard to keep it. I didn't use any paint, nails, glue, nothing like that. Everything's as is. So sometimes, I'm on all four, the camera in one, and then the balloon I'm holding in place because I want this particular location for it. Some of them, it's not even the balloon, it's my daughter's night lamp. One of the other structures that keeps coming up, it's this ladder-like wooden piece. It's also in that vitrine in the back. That is a repurposed, reused piece of my husband's architectural maquettes from architecture school. Again, by using something that was, grandpa keeps them, he brings them home and he's like, do something with it. Sometimes we make dollhouses and paint them. For this one, I incorporated it here also to create these new stories. Now it was the story of us as a family, whereas it came from two different places when he was doing, model homes and things like that as an architect. So it also helped with this idea of elevation and balance and instability, that you constantly have to find stability into life's instabilities. So some of them I created this instability manually or digitally, like the one there, and all the twisted one obviously don't have shapes like that. And that was the concept again, that you can create something stable out of these falling and non-stable features and structures. The other thing that I did was I also welcomed new technology. Painting, digital painting, it's something that's been done for over 20 years. Blue chip artists like Hockney have done that when they use applications that they could manually paint, they just paint from scratch actually. But I use them to paint some of these. Some of them you can tell, some of them you cannot tell. The idea again was just to be free and open to new technologies and applying new forms. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the politics of color. Like I said, there's color in my other works, like the Iran Balkan thing. And then these collages. And the collages, again, I went back to that lyrical, more, I guess lyrical is the right word for it. These are the palettes in a way. So those slides, now I cut out. My cutting out is pretty incisive and it's very repetitive, and it becomes crafty but also meditative. It has effects on you when you're cutting the same shape, over and over again. I look at them, sometimes I lay them and I look at them digitally to see, because the light makes them look different sometimes, so you see a shadow or a form that you wouldn't see with your naked eye, so I might follow that into the repetition. So yeah, these are like boxes. My daughter's actually stacking boxes, which I use to create color, like specific colors. I wanted to do that, to work with the primary color fact of me being exposed to it. So there's the blue one, there's the red one, there's the beige one, and so on. Again, you can look at them closer. It's pretty much, it's a more free form. It wasn't as controlled as these guys were. These guys needed much more control. The politics of color. So talking of color, I didn't pick colors that particularly. I just wanted a mix of these vivid colors, so some of them I had to go after by using that digital app. But then it did make, I studied, and there's a lot of literature on it. You guys should probably do that if you're interested, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the politics and the cultural changes of the color pink, which is very much in vogue. It has been in a few years. That piece, for example, has a lot of pink. The one that we put on the catalog, that one has a bunch of pink. So I learned that pink has been in the English language since Homer's Odyssey, but not much. It rather came later into the language in the 1800s, 1700s. It goes after the flower, in the name of flower, something Latin. But at the beginning of time, boys actually were in pink and girls were in white, in blue, because blue was the color of virginity and purity, mother of, Mary. It has been depicted in blue, and kids were actually mostly in white. But interestingly, it's Louis XV, Louis XV and 16, and Madame Pompadour and the Sèvres China that really made pink more of a household concept. They loved pink. Madame Pompadour apparently loved this, so she would make the Sèvres China being that color. But then during the war and everything, women during the war were working as nurses and all sorts of backup workers. They were in blue and gray, and the colors were muted. In '53, Mamie Eisenhower wore this dress, so it was a big deal. The whole country were, wow, look at her now. And it's very interesting because now it shows the trajectory of consumption, consumerism, economic growth, and such. So she is told to, or known to have brought pink back and making it feminine. It followed with the 50s, as we were very familiar with. Then the department store took on, girls should, in 1918, there's a women's magazine that said pink is appropriate for little boys and blue for girls. But then by the 50s, everybody was the opposite, and the Marshall Fields of the world have a hand in that. Funny Face, the movie Funny Face is all about pink, and apparently that's a big deal. So it went through the 60s and the 70s. The artists always had a hand in things, media as well, but then you have the Warhols and the Bowies, and you see how punk rock did incorporate a lot of pink in it. It continues, it's being repurposed again, and it's changing. It became more of a color of activism and defiance. The star, the triangle, that's fascinating. They didn't know that until the 70s, but Hitler used that pink triangle to label the homosexuals, trans people when they were going to the camps. So the gay movement took that and reappropriated it to make it a logo of their movement. Obviously, everybody knows about the cancer movement, Pussy Hat riots. The Gulabi Gang is another women's group in India, in northern India, that they fight against domestic violence and fight for women's rights. And then right now you have something called the millennial pink. It's somewhat close to that, but it's a little bit more pale. They say that's a gender neutral color. It's coming back, as you see, everybody is obviously wearing everything, but they trace that back to Apple's rose gold and the phone and something else commercial like that. So it's funny that there's always that intertwine of the commercial media aspect and then how we take it or use it or change the use of it. That's my daughter in her Pussy Hat hat. Pussy Hat hat. My mother did that for her. I don't think she was going for that. And that's, I think I covered everything I wanted to tell you about my process, but I'm super excited to hear your questions and your feedbacks, and feel free to ask. Cheers. Thank you.
What inspired you to make these pieces?
Okay, so I was working, I have a two-year-old daughter, so I do a lot of, you have Playmobil? You have Playmobil? Those little guys? I do a lot of dollhouses with her, we play, I buy little chairs and tables, I love doing that. And then I thought, okay, I want like these. So these are Playmobiles. You see those guys over there? They have like buses and cars and things like that. So my idea was, I want to make something that I like and I can look at and I can put on my wall, but using her stuff. Yes?
You essentially stole your daughter's toys.
Oh, I borrowed them. There's a difference. I borrowed them because I'm her mom. I didn't pay for that rental. That's the economist talking, and that's a very smart 10-year-old asking.
I have another question.
Yes?
When you use the building blocks, they look the same as the one over there, so you use them for different pieces and then put them on display over there?
Oh, good question. So the
Because they're
display,
all colors.
so yeah, every photo I took with like one, I put stuff together, the same stuff. Maybe the color of the balloon was different or the building block was different, and then I would take it away, put it away, and bring another color. So you see I'm doing a red one there, I'm doing a yellow or doing a yellow one there, for example. Is that answers your question?
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't think you brought this up, it's possibly, I was distracted and missed it, but it's such an interesting conversation yesterday when we were talking about being stuck in place in prison. Did you talk about that? Would you talk about that?
that we were stuck, the relationship of,
I thought
this
it was
object,
beautiful.
that's the, right, we did talk about that. So, we had a conversation about how there's this push and pull and contention between these objects. You have a balloon that's free and it wants to go away, and then you have the more structural and heavier pieces. Then you have a lot of proximity of things together. Maybe they don't want to be together, maybe they want to be. And it might be a reference to the fact that you were cooped up and stuck together in smaller spaces during the pandemic or when I was doing that, or that as a parent, especially the first couple of years, you're really stuck to somebody, to their stuff, and to their schedule, and to their needs. Does that cover it?
We went a little farther than that. I don't mind if you wanted to, when you were talking about coming out of prison being joyful.
Thank you, I forgot about that, yes, so, okay, yes, again, back to my background growing up. My father was a political prisoner for 3.5 years in the regime, the new regime's prison. So we were your ages, 7 to 9, and then 9 to 11, something like that. My sister and I, and that has had long-lasting effect on our resilience, on our life view, and the way we deal with issues, basically, be it a job issue or a mood issue or a pandemic issue. Whenever we feel like, oh, this is too much, we put ourselves in his shoes and we're like, come on. For 3 years, he was behind bars and he learned another language. He taught a language to somebody else. He translated books and published them, and he did sport. He came out, looking better than he went in, just because of the mindset. That it just depends on how you look at your situation, what you make out of it, no matter where you are or how bad it is. Thank you. That is a thing. That is in our DNA now. So yes, it does affect everything. Yes, you.
Now that you're embracing the colors, do you have a new favorite color or particular color that you now gravitate toward?
I've always had a favorite color. It's been purple. It's been purple since I was born. I have grown to like pink over the years, which I didn't because it was the girly color, so I didn't want to be, too associated with gender-specific colors. So I was adamantly saying I don't like it, and now I actually didn't wear them, but I have been wearing these very pink shoes throughout this exhibit, like her shirt. Yes. So yellow is something that I never thought about. But you see a lot of yellows here, it just worked. And some of it I didn't consciously work through the color wheel and things like that, or it's a whole field of studies, color theory. But then when I look at it, I did have it seems like I have had a preference of what they call the triadic colors, which is on the color wheel, you're the same distance from each other, as opposed to being next to each other, or there's some other ways of matching them. This is something we use in advertising and media and things like that. But yeah, I have welcomed other colors, but my favorite stays purple. It might have to do with auras and
I have a question for Avisheh. So you talked a bit about your creative process. Can you talk a bit about the production process itself, the materials these are on, if you did that in your own studio, why you chose those materials?
Sure. So for this series, the photos are taken here with a camera, and then they're the digital photos. So then I can do whatever I want with them, print-wise or post-production-wise. I print them on this dye-bond metal print. It's archival. Museums have started to welcome them, actually. They were more reluctant to do so. It's paper, everybody knows what to do, how to preserve it. But they're opening up to it, and Heidi knows more about it, and more galleries. And we know galleries that were not showing photo galleries, and now everything on their walls is metal. It's archival. It has, I like them because of the immediacy that you have with the piece. With frame and glass, you always have this issue of glass and reflection, and then there's the issue of conservation and archiving. I also like this production of framing them in these deep frames, because I wanted to tap into the idea of these stacking blocks and kids' items, playfulness. I wanted to make them an object, and that's partially why our installation ended up being like that too. We weren't going to do it, but as we were installing at the gallery, I really would think like, okay, this is it, this does add to the same story. But yeah, there are digital photos printed on metal. And then the collages, they're actual photographs pasted on top of board or gessoed board or gessoed canvas. And then there's a coat that goes on top of it. I've had them for years and they're fine color-wise.
You know what, I'll just comment too, when she had the Hurricane Harvey show resurfaced, one of the things we kind of joked about was that with photographs printed on metal, they could kind of survive a hurricane. They're sort of like a stop sign. It's extremely stable, and the beauty of this kind of work is you can hang it and you don't have to worry about sun fading like you do with photography. You have to be really careful, especially color photography is like the least stable. So on metal, it's very stable and really durable, and so we think it's beautiful.
Do you like it?
Oh, well, especially there's one piece with where I'm sitting, at least the way the light hits it, it's magnificent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, and this is sort of a taboo subject, but if you are looking for something to hang in a room that gets steam or humidity, I don't know, kitchen, bathroom, these are very stable. They're good for those kinds of locations. Any other questions? Well,
Yes.
I have a compliment.
Okay.
You did a really good job.
Thank you. What do you, in what sense? That they, how, in what
Like
sense?
putting it together
Okay.
because I know my friend. His name was Liam, and he had really hard time making a clay figure. And he did stuff that I would just walk by wouldn't even notice together, and it looked really good.
Thank you so much.
that was a beautiful
That's
note to
really
end on.
exciting.
I want to thank you all for coming, and if we can give